Hi, happy 52 weeks of design. This is Alexa Hampton, and today we're going to be speaking to, hi Randall, we're going to be speaking to Courtney Mcleod from the Clan Mcleod. And there she is. Oh, she's got a capital L. Darn it. I wasn't sure. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, capital L McLeod. I should have known. I
That's
I thought about it
the
long
only
and
one.
hard and picked the wrong thing. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
It is so nice to meet you
It
here.
is an absolute delight. I'm such a fan. So
Oh my
yes,
God.
yes.
Likewise. And what a rainy day treat to
I
to to be speaking to someone who has professed a love of joy in this week of like
yeah,
insomnia and the news cycle.
yeah.
Bless your
It's
heart. Thank
the
you.
scariest day ever in New York. I mean, it's a total want to stay under your covers kind of a day.
Uh, I'm in the pool house with I'm quarantining because I came back from High Point Market. So I may or may not be on the sofa under covers with a sleeping dog.
I
Um
love it. I'm jealous
anyway,
now.
it is it's pretty I mean obviously I hustled to get as much lipstick on my face as I could, but I was like, that's it.
A good lipstick does all the work.
God, the brighter the better. So I always ask everybody at the beginning of 52 um, about how they got started. And given your incredible background, I want to hear the whole story because it's so cool knowing none of the details.
Sure. So I started my company 8 years ago after spending 15 years in real estate private equity in New York. And, this is really kind of taking the path not taken many, many years ago.
Yeah.
I always had a love of the decorative arts, architecture, design. When I was a little kid, I would draw floor plans and I would steal my parents' Architectural Digest and Town and Country. So the desire was always there, but I also, was always, a geek, a math geek. So there
I'm
was
so
always that.
jealous.
And so I actually, for college, I applied to business school and architecture school. And Wharton was my dream to go there. And so I said, well, if I get in, that's the path I'm going to take. And, luckily I
Ooh,
did.
a Russian roulette of sorts.
Russian roulette, yeah. And yeah, and so I, pursued that passion for 15 years. It was a really exciting career. I traveled the world and, did all sorts of cool things. But, it never was that thing. And I
Uh-huh.
didn't realize it until I started doing this.
Yeah.
I never, that feeling, that sort of gut sense that this is what you're supposed
Totally.
to be doing.
But for those of us who don't have another very strong gift, it's a lot easier to say, okay, I'm going to follow that. It would be very, very hard to choose design if you had a great business degree. Like I get it.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, it was hard to make that decision. And, you kind of climb, and you get the job, and you look around and you're like, I still don't feel that thing. And, I was approaching 40 and I was like, all right, now is the time. But, in that world, there's very much the golden handcuffs,
Yeah,
your
yeah. I'd
lifestyle.
like to try them on.
Uh, so it took a long time to kind of get up the nerve. But I did it the exact wrong way. I was like, I quit. I had no plan. I was just no plan. But the interesting thing was it took such a long time to get there. But once I actually did it, not even a second of doubt. Like it was kind
So,
of,
so what'd you do when you quit?
I quit and I was like, oh crap.
So,
And
also, what made you quit? Like,
so,
was there an event that, well, you said turning 40 or
yeah,
close to?
my dad had gotten sick, and he recovered. He was fine, but it was one of those moments where it was like life is short,
Yeah.
and I wasn't fulfilled. And I had I was so nutty. Over had 8 or 9 apartments over 15 years
Hmm.
because I just love to decorate.
Yeah.
The fever was real. And
The
yeah,
truth will out.
yeah, and people would always say, oh my gosh, you have something, there's, you should try to pursue this. And so it was my dad getting sick was really kind of that extra push to just jump. And I did have the financial means to be able to do that, and
Which is so great.
helped,
Yeah.
for sure. But, I downsized, did all of that. So the first year, I really, felt that it was important to get technical skills. And so, I debated going for a full degree or not. I decided against that, but I went back just to, get technical skill, perspective
Yeah,
rendering,
totally, totally.
space
And
planning,
as
time.
a board member of NICED, the second career design world is a thriving place,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Absolutely.
for the
Absolutely.
reasons you're saying.
And it's so important because, I had, over the years, this was something I did, for joy, just to make myself happy. And so I had studied a lot. I had traveled. I had more of an understanding of the history of the decorative arts, and I
Mhm.
felt like it was much more, again, like those technical skills. And so my,
Informed.
my plan, yes, my plan was, and I picked up a textbook called The Professional Practice of Interior Design and read it cover to cover. And that was pretty much how I taught myself the business of design, the professional
I
side of
love
design.
that.
But my intention was that I would, try to, get an internship somewhere and work with someone else. I initially had no thoughts of, starting my own company. I'd never really been an entrepreneurial type of person at all. And, um, the universe works in mysterious ways. I had downsized to a smaller apartment in Harlem. And, I was like, let me decorate it up, I'll photograph it. That'll kind of be
Yeah.
my project. And so I was selling a lot of furniture as I downsized. And so a woman came to my new apartment to look at some chairs. And she said, this is just so lovely. I love this space. We got to chatting. I was saying I was, changing careers. And she said, well, would you, be open to helping me? So I'm thinking, well, she's here buying my old chair. So,
Yeah, there's some
you know,
simpatico.
yeah. Turns out she had a beautiful apartment down right off Washington Square Park. And she was my first client. And it
That
was
is a very kismety kind of story.
such kismet, and she really trusted me, and it was really learning by doing. And that's when I thought, okay, well, maybe I could do this on my own, and so I hung my shingle, I told everybody I knew, and it really kind of started to roll from there.
Now, had the business name been created at that point?
It had not.
Because when did that come in? Because everything you're saying just underscores how perfect it is.
You're not going to believe this, but I dreamt it. I literally dreamt
I
it.
totally believe it.
I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to call my company. I knew I didn't want it to just be my name. I knew I
Mhm.
wanted it. And I dreamt it, Shell. I was like, it's pithy, it's, and over the years, I can't tell you how many times someone has come up to me and said, you're right meets left, right? Like I remember that
Yeah.
name, and
And
so
you really are. It's not just something you're saying. Like, clearly clearly you are. Like, I want to ask you a little bit about when you went down this path and you downsized. What kind of, especially in a moment like this, where businesses are going through contractions and weird things. How did you approach, because you have this business background, what did you say to yourself when you sat yourself down? What advice did you give yourself?
Yeah.
What did your business mind tell you?
My business mind told me to be very conservative on the expense side, to start slow and work my way up, because I didn't know the business really. I didn't have the, experience of working with other people. Working with this one person really proved to me that it's one thing to decorate for yourself. It's another thing to decorate for someone else completely. And so that was, really just proof of concept. And so the business part of me, really sat down and just tried to come up with like an outline of a business plan. Okay.
Okay. What is a business plan in your terms? In like proper business person terms, what does that mean?
Yeah. So for my, baby business, it was very bare bones. It was really figuring out, okay, 12 months, what are my expenses? Like, what do I plan to invest in myself? Number one. Number two, how was I going to continue to educate myself?
Mm-hmm.
Number three, how was I going to get some work? Because that's, obviously pretty. And number four, it was really starting to think about who I wanted to be as a designer,
Mm-hmm.
and it wouldn't, the terminology of like brand would develop later, but it
Totally.
was really more, I knew that it was important to really step into this with a clear idea of who I wanted to be. And I can't underestimate how important that
And
was.
who is she?
I am unabashedly joyful. I am a person who believes in the power of color and pattern and really just doing what you want. Forget what anybody else thinks. You have to live there. So let's make it as personal and cool and interesting and fun as we can for you. I want my clients' homes, when they walk in the door, for it to just be a warm embrace, for them to just feel like I just stepped into just this space that is me. I knew that I could never pull off the I'm super cool.
Oh, I think you could pull that off, by the way. I think you are super cool. Just that approach. And I ask you to enumerate those steps, because a lot of us still don't know what a quote unquote business plan is. It seems like some sort of mysterious document. But if part of it is even that dreaming, that's so great to hear.
It is. And of course, if it's a more complicated business, if it's, a more sort of, financially investment heavy business, it has to be something that's more formal and articulated. But as a one woman, business, I needed something to just give me some direction. The other thing I did early on was, again, I got lucky. I had a lovely client that I worked with who happened to be a business consultant. And so, this was about 2.5 years in, and I was at a point where I had done some work that I was proud of. I had some clients, coming in, and I was kind of at this tipping point from, very, very, very baby to kind of wanting to get to the next level. And I was having a hard time really figuring out what that was and what that could really look like. And even though I do have a business background, it's always, a consultant can really, really help you. I really encourage anybody, if they are at a sort of tipping point in their business, to speak with someone. And
like a shrink, maybe.
It's like a business shrink. It really.
Yeah.
And oh my God, that is so spot on, because I quickly realized that the issues I were having, they were like all in my head. It was all getting past, you know, any feelings of doubt and, you know, lack of
negative self-talk.
confidence. Yeah. You know, and especially for me, because it took me many years to kind of own the idea that I'm a creative person. You know, I had always told myself, you know, I'm a finance person, you know, I'm not a creative person. And I really found that my business transformed once I was able to full-throated, full-chested,
Embrace.
I am a creative person and, you know, I have a talent for this. And it probably took me about year 4 to get there. You know, it took time. And
I get that. I totally get that.
but once I did, it like the whole thing changed. And it was because my mentality changed, my approach to things changed, my willingness to invest in myself changed, just the whole
Now, what
trajectory.
does that mean?
So for
I mean,
one, yeah.
I mean,
So
I know what that means. What does that mean to you? I don't want you to be like, she's an idiot.
yeah, no. Well, you know, one big thing for me was deciding to go from a home office to working outside of my home. And my first step with that was I worked at Fuego. They're
Right.
closed now in New York. It was like a co-working space.
Yeah, I know exactly.
And that was one of the best decisions I ever made, because I stepped into a space surrounded by, for the most part, designers that were ahead of me in the game, in their careers. And being around those people, seeing the way that they worked, seeing what they were doing, some of it was validating because I realized I was doing the same things that they were doing.
Okay.
That was good. But then it also helped me to just think bigger, to really start to say, okay, you know what? I can do more. I'm ready.
Yeah.
And being in that environment, it just opened up, you know, there's always a direct line, because I got into that environment and then the different type of clients started to come. So it's, you know, it's hard to kind of,
right. It's kind of like a self-manifestation.
kind of, yeah.
So many questions. First, when you were doing your business plan and you said to yourself, you know, one of the things you enumerated was, how am I going to get clients? What was your answer to that?
Yeah.
Because I think that is the ongoing battle for everybody. Obviously, we publish, we try and get attention. We want successful partnerships with our clients so that we have word of mouth. I assume it was a million times harder starting as a second career. Like, how did you approach that?
Sure. And I will say that this changes, right, as you progress in your career, like how you approach this fundamental question.
Sure.
At the very beginning, it was photograph that one project. And there was a particular image from that one where it was sort of a straight on shot of a really big piece of art and this beautiful hot pink feathered Nina Ricci cocktail dress that I had sort of hung on the frame of the art. And it just was such a graphic image. And that project and that image, I set up my website.
That's so interesting.
I put it on House, which at that time, House had kind of was really like in its heyday.
Right.
And I obviously, you know, all my friends, I was like, I will do your house for $1.
Oh, that is terrible advice.
Terrible advice. But like one of my best friends, I did their they had just bought a brownstone in Brooklyn, and I worked on the parlor level. And, you know, I charged them a fee, you know, it was a modest fee at the time, but, you know, it was such a fabulous collaboration, and the project turned out so beautifully. In fact, I'm part of a book project next year, and one of those images from that project is going to be in there. And it was one of my very first projects, which I feel very, very proud of. That makes me feel, that warms my heart. But yeah, and it was literally just, word of mouth and talking to everyone I could think of. Hows for me early on, super, super helpful.
Yeah.
I also tried other things. There was, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of it. It's out of business now, but there was like an interior designer referral kind of service
Right,
thing.
right. It was by a woman who then subsequently died. Is that the one?
It was like that. It was one of the competitors.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of terrible because, you would go meet a client and their budget was like $500 to decorate the entire apartment. It was that kind of thing.
We've all had those meetings.
We've all had those. But at the beginning, I took jobs like that.
Sure.
Because I needed the experience. I needed,
I just
flow to do it. And so I took a lot of really small, rinky-dinky type projects, and there was no ego about it. It was just, I'm going to make it the best I can and just kind of just know that I'm building, and building confidence. I had to do those little projects to get the confidence and the skill set and the ability to do the bigger projects,
And that budget, obviously nobody ever desires a $500 budget to my whole house, but small projects always have a place in a person's professional portfolio because they're quick, they bill fast, and they're not to be completely abandoned, I think.
I agree. And there's something of that quick fulfillment, from a project like that. So yeah, and so it really it just started just bare, really at the bottom, and I think, a lot of times people come into this and they want to start at the
sure
stuff, but that's not realistic. And I look back and I'm really glad that I had that, few years at the beginning where, that's where I was. And then I actually, the project that was just put on Architectural Digest on the website.
Yeah.
That was the first bigger project that I had done. The clients, I had done a nursery for them in the city, and they loved it. And then they ended up selling that apartment very shortly after and moving to this home. And, they knew that this was, very big for me, but they were like, let's do it, and it was a real, leap of faith on their part. And, I still I'm so smiley about it because it was so incredible. And it was a chance to do a lot of things that I hadn't had the budget to do before, like custom hand painted wallpaper and custom furniture and, new hardwood flooring. Let's just all sorts
to touch all of the surfaces that
all of the services and start to work with artisans and sort of see that side of it.
Yeah.
But also the all important project management side of it, the execution side of it. When you're working on, a 9,000 square foot house, that's a lot of space. A lot of room.
Now, at this point, are you still a one-woman show when you were doing that project?
Yeah, I was still a one-woman show.
Okay, yep. So that alone is impressive because that is so many details.
So many details, and using a robust project management system for me from the very beginning was so important. And I realized later on that in the beginning, I didn't need something that had quite that much functionality. But
you're talking about software, right?
Software, yeah. So I was using Studio Designer. And so, it had a lot of functionality that maybe I didn't need, but then later on, I was an expert in it. And so I was able to use technology to help me amplify my my work capacity.
Right.
I wouldn't do it again.
But that is so, that kind of impressive gutsiness is clearly the product of also your prior success. You know, like there's nothing you can't do. Like you are a professional, even though this was a new profession. You were a successful professional, right? I mean, because it is daunting when you're starting, if it's your first career, um, to, you know, like you're growing up at the same time. So I love that you know, that it's so sexy.
Yeah, you know, and it wasn't something I expected that I would be able to, you know, use so much of the skills that I had from my previous career.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like being able to, you know, articulate your ideas, being able to present, organization, financial management, you know, project management, all of that I came in
And
with
your clients must love that.
because one of the first things I say is this is going to be a spectacularly creative journey, but at the end,
I thought you were going to say expensive.
but but I said at the end of the day, I understand that this is a financial investment, and I'm going to treat this with the seriousness that deserves, you know, and that I take the fiduciary responsibility very seriously.
Every one of us listening to you right now is using that line.
I mean,
Come tomorrow, because of course we do.
of course you do, but I think that there is a perception that, you know, designers can be, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, and deserved or not. And, you know, I found that establishing trust
Oh,
is the number one thing. And if you
yeah.
can do that as quickly as possible with a new client, it makes everything else so much easier. And so at the very beginning, that's how I start to establish trust. And then when I start to come to them with my crazy creative idea, they've got trust and they're like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that sounds nuts, but okay, let's do it, you know? And so it works on multiple levels, you know, and quite frankly, I think as a professional in this industry, everyone should have that perspective towards their clients' money. I mean,
Totally.
whether
Totally. Otherwise, there's going to be that anxiety on their part that we're
oh,
just going to like drive the car into a wall.
absolutely,
Um,
absolutely. So for me, you know, I kind of, you know, pull out the business background to give some, you know, credence to that, and you know, I'm not just saying it that I have the
yeah,
skills to do it, and that absolutely helps. And it's one of my differentiators. You know, we all have our
totally.
unique, you know, things that we bring to the table, and so for me that's one of them. And I try to, you know, use all the tools in the box to
So, so it's interesting. Like, obviously, the logic, the smarts, the experience as a successful professional, but that that photograph that you mentioned before about the Nina Ricci dress on the artwork, that is so clearly just a stroke of brilliance. Like it captured something that was more than just decorating, right? It was a joie de vivre. It was luxury, but playfulness, and you know, like that only comes from a creative brain.
well, and you know, it was my apartment. And so I wanted to approach it like I would work with a client. And so I wanted it to be my fantasy, the ultimate, like
Yeah,
just me, personal. And, you know, when I worked in finance, you know, my indulgence, I loved fashion and high fashion. And so that was, you know, my guilty pleasure. And so, you know, so putting that piece into my space in that way was really an expression of who I
yeah,
am as an individual.
yeah.
And I think that's why it was successful. And I think that's why it resonated with people, because it was so personal and it was like, why not?
Yeah,
Why
not a
not?
stage set where every pillow's been karate chopped, but a
Exactly.
real zeitgeisty
Exactly.
lifestyle.
And, you know, that was one of the, you know, I spoke, you know, early on about who I wanted to be as a designer. And, I think I knew instinctually maybe from the very beginning that, I wanted to approach it where it wasn't like, I'm designing for the neighbors. I always wanted it to be this really personal, thing. And I guess because I had done so many apartments for myself, and I knew the power of a beautiful home. I knew what it like to just be like work to the bone and get home and just, fall into the warm embrace of my beautiful apartment. And,
and
so
now everyone else knows it too.
and so
Stuff inside and
so it all is kind of, full circle in a way. And, I've, really developed, I feel like, and evolved, and my confidence has really built, and I'm, embarking on new avenues of, expanding my business, which is really exciting. But it's been a journey,
do you have like a checklist, or not a checklist? Do you stop yourself every few years? How long have you been in business now? 8 years, 6 years?
Over the summer.
So do you, when you do your business plan, and you do, even if that's just a psychological checking in, have you done that again at each growth level? Do you stop and
fourth quarter of every year, October, November, December, is my business plan for next year. That's where I get into the, okay, like where, what am I gonna try?
Goals?
What are my goals?
Yeah.
What are the pain points from the last year that I want to try to fix next year? How am I going to set myself up to do that?
Can I intern for you? So amazing.
But the key is that that's important, but it's not the most important. I do it every month. I have a little mini check-in with myself, and I have like a list of goals, and I'm like, okay, I want to do XYZ this month. And then it's very motivating, because you get to the end of the month and you haven't like done any of this stuff. You're like, oh crap, let me get myself in. So I use it as a way to keep pushing myself forward, and keep, you don't grow without intention. And I think that it's really easy, especially when you don't have a big team, to get lost in the minutia of the job. And so I think that really having those moments throughout the year where you do give yourself some space to say, okay, wait, let me put on my CEO big thinker hat and figure out what's the potential. But the one of the key things I learned from the consultant was, goal setting was something that we, really sort of worked through, and how to do. And I remember this so well. I went to her with my set of goals, and she was like, you got to think bigger. And she was like, why not go for this and this and this? And I thought she was nuts. I was like, there's no way I can accomplish that in the next 6 months. What are you even talking about? 6 months later, bam, 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 hit those goals.
I think if you want to give this person's business card out at some point,
Caroline,
tons of business from this.
She's fantastic. We've kept in touch over the years. She is lovely, and so one of the other things we did, so she had me do this visioning worksheet, and so she said, okay, 10 years from now, just write where you are, what you're doing, what is your business like in 10 years. And I'll never forget this. I sat down and I was like, huh. And I literally, it all just came out like all at once. And it was, I'm I'm planning to, fly to Chicago to shoot the cover of Elle Decor.
Yeah.
And, and I have, a wonderful, group of clients. I was like, I have my pied-à-terre in Paris.
I'm like, I want that too.
I spent a month, and I work a long distance. And I said, I have a team that, you know, is like the best. And I said, you know, we're about to celebrate 10 years, so I'm taking them to the Bahamas. And I said, I'm going to have an office with big windows in the Flatiron District. And I said, you know, I'm going to every day, you know, go home, you know, tired, but happy and blessed by what I've created.
Yeah.
And, you know, I haven't quite gotten the cover yet, but I've been
Well, you're only in year 8.
working on it. But I've been published multiple times. I have a beautiful office in the Flatiron. You know, I'm building my team. It's like wonderful. I have now gotten to the point where I think I'm attracting the right kinds of clients, because all of my clients to the one are ideal clients for me right now. And that is such a good feeling. I don't think I've ever had that.
Do you know, hearing somebody praise their clients, I always think it's the biggest bummer when I hear other designers being like, oh, you know, clients. Because it's like, oh no, that's like, this is our job. You know, every day. And if you make fun of it and say it's terrible, that means like your life is terrible.
A terrible client can ruin your day.
Of course, but like there are so many wonderful clients who are you know, who as you said, like, you just think, wow, this is perfect, or maybe they're pushing us a little harder and we're learning something from it. You're inspiring so many people, me most of all. What are you, no, I can feel like my cheeks are getting red because I'm excited and because they have blush on them, but I can feel them heating up. With your office, what are you doing with your office in this moment?
Yeah, you know, yeah, I think I'm a little bit of a contrarian on this. I think that, you know, the conventional wisdom is to downsize out of an office, but for me, you know, I get so much out of being in that space.
Yeah.
There's something about being there where the creativity flourishes, the like work ethic flourishes. I just feel like I'm like, you know, super Courtney when I'm
Right, like the equivalent of getting up and taking a shower. Like, it's
kind of, yeah.
starting the day.
And so for me, you know, there are a lot of psychological benefits perhaps to having an office. You know, I have a small apartment, so I really hate having all my work stuff here.
Sure.
And so, you know, when I did finally transition out, it was just such a blessing, and I was able to have a little bit more balance, not work 24/7. You know, but also it's like approaching it in a smart way. You know, I share my office with 2 other designers from Fuego. When Fuego we decided to get an office together. And so it's a beautiful space, but the financial, you know, sort of burden isn't too much.
Yeah.
Listen, times are tough. Renegotiate your rent. We renegotiated, and we have a much better deal now. You know, so for me, the financial impact isn't too much. I'm looking to hire.
Knocking on wood.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm looking to hire. You know, with sort of everything that's happened this year, I've gotten, you know, a lot more exposure, and you know, with it has come, you know, more projects, quite frankly, and which has been.
Are you traveling, or are they in the neighborhood?
Both.
And by in the neighborhood, I mean tri-state.
Both. We're starting a project in DC next month, which is really fun. And I've done most of the things are local, but I've done a project in Massachusetts and Florida, Detroit. I did a show house out there. So yeah. So, and I like doing traveling for work, and like the logistics around that. That's a whole another
you
level.
Like the logistics?
No, but it's a challenge.
Okay, yes. Okay. I was about to faint.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. It's fun to see other places, and it's food for the soul.
It's food, and it's, for me, it's a sign of growth. It's a sign of, it's another skill. It's another rung for me. And, you know, I'm a person where I'm just constantly just trying to get to the next level, just trying to get that, you know, client, just get that opportunity. And, you know, it's a lot of doors have opened recently, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
You know, I'm dipping my toe into licensing. I'm part of a book thing next year, and there's some others. It's like some things that I wanted, you
Yeah.
know, but you know, the opportunity, I just hadn't had the
Yeah.
I hadn't had the shot.
And maybe hadn't even dreamt of some of them because things just
You know,
change.
I did dream of them. I did.
Got it.
Because it's hard because, you know, I didn't always feel this way, but I'm like, I know I can do this, you know, and I know I have potential to do more. And it's just sometimes it's the opportunity. It's you know, yeah, I don't know how better to put it, but it's
I think you're putting it pretty well.
you know, and it can be frustrating, you know, to know that you can do more and to sort of have the door closed repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly. You know, so the
Though you know that this is smarmy sounding, but like that in its way is, you know, when I look at failures I've had or jobs I didn't get, I'm like, okay, well, that's another part of my growth. But what you were saying about on to the next, on to the next, sometimes I feel like if I say on to the next level, um, that can be discouraging because, you know, maybe you don't get that next thing. But
sure,
I think of it then as another adventure.
sure,
Because then
sure.
it's not necessarily that it is lateral, but it feels like less of a, you know, I'm not disappointed in myself if I'm taking on an adventure.
Oh, 100%. And let me be perfectly clear. You know, it's 3 steps forward, 1 step backward.
Yeah, totally.
Not a straight shot to the moon. You know, it's you know, just succeed more than you fail.
Yeah. I mean,
You
yeah,
know,
and I think it's yeah that
you know, and so
it is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and I think, you know, as a business owner, you have to get right and get comfortable with that. You know, like I just said, you know, a
So
lot of
somebody has a question for you.
yeah.
Sorry, continue. Don't let me interrupt you.
Oh, yeah. No. I was just gonna say, you know, a lot of things have opened, but I also just pitched a huge project that would have been amazing. And I threw everything at it. I was like,
Yeah,
there's no way I'm not getting this. And then I didn't get it. I was devastated, and then I got over it. You know, so it's put your best foot forward. As long as you
they're
do
going to come
that,
back to you. They're going to come back.
you know what?
I'm putting it out there.
Put it in the universe. Yes.
They're going to come back. They're going to think they want something else. They're going to realize that they had it right with you to begin with, and they're going to come back. And then we're going to chuckle about this. Um, a friend would like to ask you if you have a couple of clients you'd like to work with. Now, I'm not sure what you mean, Mickey, by that. You mean like notionally, or do you mean actual people? Because,
I can say the type. I have a couple of
yeah,
types of
that's great.
you know, I will say I'm currently working with my first like celebrity client, which is
Ooh,
kind of fun. Yeah,
that
which
is
is
a,
really cool. And they turn out to be the nicest people ever, like so down to earth, which is great. But one big dream is to do a gut renovation of a townhouse in Manhattan.
yeah.
You know, I am pitching. I just sent the proposal to do that for a beautiful brownstone in Brooklyn. So that would be a really lovely stepping stone, you know, and because I haven't done a gut renovation of a brownstone. And so yeah, so that's a big one that I'm like, I'm ready to do that.
Do you know who you'd work with to do the gutting? Do you have like a group of contractors that you love and
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You can't, you couldn't take on something like that without.
totally. I agree.
Yeah.
People really want you to name people that you want to work with. They want you to manifest.
Well, I mean, well, you know, Beyonce, if we're gonna.
Well, again, for my intern. Yeah.
um,
Oh, who's a style crush? That's a good question.
oh gosh. Well, Style Miles Red is a huge
Yeah,
style
yeah.
crush.
He's
Of
amazing.
course, you know, Dorothy Draper, you know, the queen of like over the top, I'm gonna do whatever I want,
Yeah.
amazingness.
Well, I love that your childhood bedroom had those Dorothy Draper moments.
Oh, totally. Oh gosh.
So your parents were into it.
Oh gosh, my mom, she was so fearless. I mean, that's where I get it. You know, I lived in a world of color and pattern and fearlessness. And growing up in New Orleans, you're kind of surrounded by that.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I
so,
love New Orleans. Have you
oh,
worked there?
I have, that's the other dream
You,
project.
you've got
Not
to work
project.
there.
Putting it in the universe. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never done one in my hometown. I would love, love, love to do that. Um, yeah, it's and then, you know, another person that I really admire is the designer Amy Lau.
Oh, of course.
I was brand new. I went to the AD show. You know, she had spoken on the keynote, you know, and I sheepishly went up to her after and asked her to sign. I had her book. I
Yeah.
asked her to sign it, and she was so lovely. She took like 10 minutes to ask me about myself and my business and give me advice and encourage me. And it was, and she's like this, you know, design goddess type, you know, and it was so unexpected and so lovely. And it's something I'd never forgotten.
Yeah.
And I thought someone in her position could have been so different, you know, and I was like, that's the kind of energy that I want to give. Like that's the
So
kind.
when you're keynoting, you will sign our books and ask us about ourselves and give us pointers.
100%. 100%. Um,
Um,
yeah, and then of course, Sheila Bridges is she was one of the first sort of introductions, like way, way, way back in the day.
uh,
Um, her sense of color is just unparalleled in my
yeah,
opinion.
it
Like
is. She's does beautiful, beautiful work.
beautiful. I mean, just what she does with color and light is just unparalleled. And it's I've got to know her in the last couple of years, and which has just been such a delight for me because I admire her work so much. But
And
yeah,
she's also super funny. Like
she she's a hoot.
I told her, I think she's subversively funny, and she and I both went to the same college, and she said, "Oh yeah, my college friends would totally call me that." Like wickedly funny. Yeah,
Yeah, so those are a few. I could probably name like a million,
of
but
course. But it's good. It's good to like, you know. I actually, when you said Miles Red on your questionnaire, I loved that you picked a contemporary.
oh yeah,
Because like a lot of us, you know, it's like that, who would you invite to dinner, you know, if you could have 10 people alive or dead, and they're always like dead people. And I
oh,
I
oh yeah.
loved that it was.
It's I mean honestly, I'm just a big believer in this up and down. Like there is room for you to
Totally.
succeed and for me to see. You know, I, I'm a big believer that what you put out, you get tenfold back.
Yeah, me too.
Help someone, it's always come back to me. Every time I've promoted, you know, pushed someone, I just, yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
and it might not come back in like the same form, but it comes
Oh,
back in happiness or in, yeah.
100%. So I never get that sort of thing where people are like,
No,
you know,
I don't think people do it because they are jealously keeping things. I just think a lot of times people think of heroes as not contemporaneous. But I'm
yeah,
with you. Like I love looking at other designers' work and you know, like I tease Markham Roberts like, so I can't wait to see your book so I can see what I'll be doing next year. You know, like,
I mean, when your apartment was published, I remember the image specifically was of the living room and with the beautiful window treatments, and it was this really beautiful kind of blue-green walls, and that's been on my inspiration board since I saw it. It was one of
So
the main.
inspiration boards, do you keep those? And how many do you have going at any given moment?
Well, every project, I actually spend a good bit of time on the inspiration board because that's such an important tool for me. So, for many, many, many reasons. So I in my office, I have up all of the client project inspiration boards. And then of course I have my physical board that's behind my desk. And then I've got all my Pinterest boards.
Right.
So I am constantly pinning, saving something, is in the back of my mind. And I remember with your space in particular, it was the window treatments that I went to much, much later. I was like, oh my gosh, I remember. I thought it was so beautiful. And I went back to the image and I was like, yes, that's like, so that's what I want, And so it was, I do that all the time.
And for me, that window treatment came off of an inspiration in my head of this great book, Neoclassicism in the North, which is just like this awesome book you have to get if you don't already have it.
I
But
did. Some of the North?
Neoclassicism in the North. And
in
it's
the North.
like all these great Swedish, like Drottningholm and like, just heavenly.
Yeah. So I mean, I love seeing what other designers are doing in their work, and I'm never one to copy, but it's all inspiration. It's all
and it's yeah. I mean, if yes, I mean, if you can't be inspired by something and work off of it, you're going to end up with a two-legged chair, and they don't sit so well, those two-legged chairs.
Pretty fun. And I find that like look at like that room, like I look at that image and there are so many lessons, I think, design lessons in that room. And so when I look at designers like yourself, like very leaders of the industry, I look at their work and I look at it for lessons. I look at it for what can I learn about how to be a better designer from the way that they
as I hope we all, if you stop doing that, you're dead.
Yeah.
But I just had a question for you, and it just left my brain. I'm having, because this is why, I'm ending the 2-week quarantine, and I'm now at the brain as mush phase of the quarantine. But I wanted to ask you, so because you have both sides of the brain that you are constantly cultivating, when you are just talking to your clients about the look and the inspiration and the direction, do you split your communication down the middle? Is half of it verbal and half of it is images? Is it all images? Is it a mishmash? I'm curious.
It's a mix, typically in that sort of concept phase at the beginning.
Somebody's calling you.
We have the presentation meeting. It is a balance between the creative concept idea and then what is that going to translate to in terms of like dollars.
But I mean, do you say I see this color pink because of da-da-da, or do you say like here's the it's for me a constant source of curiosity how to convey these creative impulses that we have to our clients, like why they're not just impulses.
Yeah, well, and I think that's where a really good concept board comes in, because if you have a good concept board, you can create the story.
Mm-hmm.
It guides that conversation that you're describing. And because really you're trying to paint a picture.
Yeah.
And I find that at least at that very beginning stage, before we get into, this is the paint color for your living room, or this is your sofa, it's more having them buy into the dream of it. Mm-hmm. You have to create a little bit of that fantasy. You have to start getting them to think bigger or think,
plumb the depths of their.
Yeah. And so, over the years, I've tried lots of different ways. But I find that when I have a really clear, strong concept board, it works for me. The clients seem to get it, and we seem to really properly start the project on the same page. So yeah, that's how I do it.
So somebody's just saying, and I'm trying to figure out exactly what she's asking. When taking on clients, do you need to present the whole project up front, or they trust you and you just show them? I don't know. I
Well,
don't know exactly what that question means. Like,
yeah.
do,
So,
do they sign on just because they know your work, and then you develop the concept with them?
well, so my sort of process, I have like a 5-phase process, and when the client signs the agreement, their retainer is really for phase 1 of that process, and that is really the concept phase. And so they're only at the beginning 100% committing to phase 1.
Uh-huh.
Chance for them to get to know me and how I work, and it's also a chance for me to get to know them
Mm-hmm. Sure.
before we both
Commit.
get, yeah. And so knock
You
on
want to go
wood.
to a couple of dinners together before you
Yeah.
go home with them.
Get a date first. So I've knock on wood, I haven't had anyone go through phase 1 and not continue, but I always approach these kinds of things thinking, what would I want? What would I in my kind of mind? And I would find it for me difficult to fully commit, that much time and money to someone completely
Yeah.
unknown to me. And so I find that this is a great way to, again, establish trust.
Yeah.
And I tell them I do it this way because I want you to
To
get to
have
know
the freedom
me.
and yeah.
Because I want to be the right designer for you, and if I'm
Yeah.
not, then you walk away with some actual work, like you walk
And
away
yeah.
tangible, and so they really like that, and they're like, it builds trust. And so
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I was telling somebody the other day on one of these talks that when I took over the business, took over when my father died, I realized that he had not been charging until after he presented.
Oh, wow.
And well, but I guess, when you're Mark Hampton,
Well,
great. But I was like, we need to change that immediately
but
because like I can't wing that. That's crazy.
no,
But that could have also just been it was another era, you
I
know,
think I think
gentlemanly.
I,
Don't talk about trade. Who knows? But yeah, I did not feel at all comfortable doing that because I thought, great, we'll just go straight out of business.
that just when I think about how much work goes into that phase 1, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't last very long if I was doing that for free all over
Yeah,
the
and
place.
he had like 20 employees. It just boggles the mind, but I think it was a different era. And also I didn't always, uh, working for him, I was shielded from a lot of uncomfortable things because he wouldn't want his daughter to see it, or because he didn't think that was appropriate parent-child. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it is interesting, like listening to you coming into it with your business sense. You had all of the canvas to paint on in terms of how do I want to structure my company. So I'm loving hearing like the fact that you have 5 stages. So first one is the
Concept,
concept.
and sort of draft budget. So we're just kind of all on the same page.
Uh-huh.
And then the second phase is design development, and that's where you get into all the nitty gritty and specifications and all
Mm-hmm.
that good stuff. Phase 3 we term as like our purchase management phase, and that's where we sort of do all ordering and planning and all that kind of stuff. Phase 4 is if we're doing a renovation, that sort of is typically part of our phase
Right.
4. And then phase 5 is installation and completion.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so it's the normal
Yeah.
process, but again, it's articulated in a very
That
organized
I was just going to say, I like that you
way.
articulated it.
And
Um,
I the clients, I have this like welcome packet thing that I do, and it's all in detail, and I even have like
who
an
are you? You're
each
amazing.
like client deliverables and designer deliverables at each stage, so they'll know like what to expect. And it's
And what
like,
they need to do to make it succeed.
oh yeah, and I have in my contract that, like, I think I phrased it like expeditious client approvals are necessary for successfully completing in timely fashion. You know?
Yeah. Totally.
You know,
That so this is a partnership.
It's a partnership. It's a partnership. And so again, it's all of those little things are establishing trust so that they'll let me do the crazy creative things that I want to do. So,
well, we have just hit the hour mark, but I have to tell you, everybody who sees this, like, I'm madly in love with you. I hope that doesn't make you feel uncomfortable. I am in love. I'm in love. I'm inspired. I am definitely stealing some things straight off the bat. I thank you so much for this. It, you know, especially like on a gross day and the election's approaching and I'm thinking civil war is about to break out, to hear such like wonderful sense, and you, like, it's clear you are a joyful person, and I am just so excited for all the things that are happening for you. And that job is coming back.
No, I can't tell you how delighted and thankful I am that you're.
Okay, well, we're not going to do this over and over.
I know. I am. I'm over the moon, and thank you again for shining a spotlight. I
think you've given all of us like a lot of tools. This has been just such a meaty conversation, and thank you.
Thank you.
And you know, clearly drinks will have to be had very soon.
Yes, it's a date.
Right. Kisses. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for